You are listening to the US of NA, a series of stories about the founders and innovators shaping the non-alcoholic movement from every corner of the country and beyond. For a full library of episodes, go to usofna.com or make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
It was a full circle moment. I will never forget it. Walking in there with my family and my kids and, seeing it on the shelf for the first time and, taking selfies with the bottles. And yeah, it was a very sweet kind of lifetime memory moment, which is really cool.
That was Lauren Chitwood, CEO and one of a co-founder trio that started Spiritless, a now very successful non-alcoholic spirits brand based in Austin, Texas, talking about the first time she saw her product in a Total Wine. We'll hear more from her in a minute. I'm your host of the US of NA podcast, John Eggleton, chief optimist of Non-Alcoholic Nation. This was our first deep dive into the world of NA spirits, and in it, Lauren first goes into their founder story, which included buying large quantities of Old Forester from Total Wine to experiment with in her basement. Talk about a full circle moment. In her interview, she also talks about how the market has evolved since they've been around. They were a pre-pandemic brand, and how appealing to those moderating alcohol intake and not just eliminating it was always the vision. Lauren also goes into the portfolio a bit, who their target market is primarily, as well as what decisions they are grappling with today, which includes whether to play or not to play in the red-hot THC drink space. As she explains, that raises both regulatory and distribution questions they have not had to deal with to date. She also has a great take on what it's like being a female-founded brand in a male-dominated spirits world. Hint, she and her female co-founders don't spend a lot of time thinking about that and have instead focused on being the successful, data-driven entrepreneurs that they are. Here's our conversation. All right. Lauren Chitwood is the co-founder and CEO of Spiritless, founded in 2019, which is going to be one of the biggest brands in the growing non-alcoholic spirits market. Prior to founding Spiritless, she had her own successful events company, where her work drew recognition from national media outlets such as InStyle and Martha Stewart Weddings. Lauren, thanks so much for joining us today, and welcome to the US of NA.
Oh my goodness. Well, John, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Excellent. Well, I'd first love to talk about your founder story a little bit. I know you and your two co-founders have a really good one. You started, I believe, the company in your basement, is my understanding. So there's some good startup vibes, I think, from basements and garages. Some guys named Wozniak and Jobs, I think, started in a similar way. So some good karma there to start. I think all three of you too realized there needed to be, there must be better alternatives out there to alcohol, specifically related to more bourbon, whiskey type flavors, which were very much lacking, especially when you guys started the company. So would just love to hear that founder story and how it all kind of came together.
Yeah, no, it'd be my pleasure to share. So, I always say I've been feeding people and giving them something to drink for almost my entire life. So, the case study in how Spiritless came to be, has been going on for many 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 years. Whether I was fully aware of it or not, but it was in October of 2019, and actually, I'm really fortunate. This is the second business that my co-founders and I have had the opportunity to scale together. So, there's something really extraordinary about that. Everyone's strengths and weaknesses at that point. And, actually, despite knowing that, we decided to do it again, which I think just speaks volumes to kind of the power of our trio. But yeah, we really pulled up and we said, gosh, there's something here. Everyone is looking for an alternative. Those are really hard to find. Also the word alternative sort of stinks. Like, who wants to feel like they're having a lesser than something? These are all sort of conversations that we're having. And so, we had just seen Seedlip come to market and enter the US, and we were in bourbon country. And so we were running around with all the good old boys talking about, that precious brown liquid, and all the while, bluntly speaking, not being able to keep up. And so we just said, let's make a non-alcoholic bourbon, which, is sort of, there's an oxymoron to that, obviously. And, we had lots of head scratchers and, lots of grumpy old men say, like, who wants this shit? We drink for effect, Lauren. What are you talking about? And so it truly did start in our basement. And one of the things that we felt really strongly about was that process was incredibly important. Like when we understood the spirits industry, you were oftentimes making a selection about pulling something off the shelf. Obviously, marketing and label and all of that was really important, but that brand story in the production of it, like at what age, at what grain, what kind of mash bill, etc. That was all really important in making that purchase decision. And so when we looked at the category, we said, I don't know, a lot of this really feels like flavored water. That was really important for us to figure out what's there. So we pulled up. It was YouTube University all the way. We built this little makeshift still in the basement. Yes, the basement is true. And it was a big commercial popcorn tin with a commercial sous vide that went down in the pot that we sealed. And we connected it to a sump pump and a cooler where we were essentially just low and slow trying to dealkalize bourbon off the shelf. We were buying like so much bourbon at Total Wine. We kind of laughed every time we walked in there. They were like, "Lady, like, what are you doing?" And we were essentially, trying to take it off and hold on to that waste and that vapor product and see what was what. And so that informed a lot of things for us. There was some really incredible learnings, like, can we get this down to non-alcoholic levels? That was a real issue and a real question for a while. What kind of flavor volatiles are there actually even left, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So the process has evolved. I'm really excited to share that, Spiritless owns both the process and the application patent for making non-alcoholic spirits in the US. And it's not exact. The way we make it now is not the way we make it. Way we made it in the basement, but there were some incredible learnings there that then informed, our ultimate invention, which is really cool.
Wow. So did I hear you say sump pump in there? Did you guys really took that basement thing pretty seriously, apparently?
So seriously, and only as a Southeasterner do you have a sump pump on hand. Yeah, but no, that is essentially what we did. So it was sort of crazy. I mean, I didn't do well in chemistry in college, so my whole family was like very perplexed by this whole process.
No, that's great. We love that. And I don't know if it ever crossed your mind walking into Total Wine, buying all those sample bottles when you were trying out, that eventually your brand would be for sale in there as well. It must have been a full circle moment when that happened.
It was a full circle moment. I will never forget it. Walking in there with my family and my kids and, seeing it on the shelf for the first time and, taking selfies with the bottles. And yeah, it was a very sweet kind of lifetime memory moment, which is really cool.
Awesome. And did we read that right, that it was Old Forester? Was that what you guys used as the first?
A lot of Old Forester, which is a great bourbon, by the way. High value bourbon. I would highly recommend it to anybody looking for an everyday.
Certainly is. And I imagine your Kentucky roots may have had something to do with that. You know a thing or two about bourbon, I'm sure.
I know a thing or two about bourbon, and I have a lot of friends that know actually even more than me about bourbon. So it is in the water.
So I know the company, I believe in 2021, moved to Austin. So tell us about that. What drove that, and what drove that decision, and what that transition looked like for the three of you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it was really, it was kind of it was like a perfect summation of a bunch of things, right? So at that point, we actually did all of our distilling and blending and bottling in Texas. So, we were distilled in Houston, we were blended and bottled in Waco. And so there was already just an enormous shuffle where we were there more often. I think, secondarily, obviously, we were sitting at the forefront of ultimately a wellness trend. And, while I love Louisville and am still so glad to have roots here, it was just not going to be a place that was really ready to embrace with enthusiastic open arms a wellness trend. Even just from a size perspective, it didn't make a lot of sense. So, it was for a variety of reasons that we said, you know what, Austin feels like the place for us, and let's go ahead and move corporate headquarters. And one of our founders moved there. Lexi, my business partner, moved there. And it's been an incredible decision. I think Texans love Texas stuff, which I don't know if you've spent much time in Texas, but it's its own ecosystem in every way. Yeah. So to be able to say that, we've got founders in Texas, we're based out of Austin, and, that we distill in Houston. Texas has been very good to us, and it was the right decision for the business at the time. Absolutely.
No, that makes sense. So you started in Kentucky. I believe your first product was Kentucky 74. So which makes sense. Obviously the bourbon connection there. You later moved into the RTD category, which was our own, personal experience or first experience, I should say, with the brand, the pour over old fashioned. We definitely love a good old fashioned, as many do, and that's one of our NA go to favorites that we enjoy. But we'd love to hear you talk about the product mix a little bit, and which seem to be some of the consumer favorites, and where do you see the portfolio going next?
Sure. So, I always say we're very data-driven decision makers. For us, we're looking at where are enormous categories and how can we just take the tiniest bit and make an impact, right? And that's why, bourbon especially at the time, there was so hot. And, I think we can talk about just the larger macro trends that are going on with consumption in general later on, but it was very clear that there was something there with bourbon. And, if you look at sort of the arc of our business, we've lived in really kind of nutty times. October of 19, the everything is great. Then, 2020 obviously was what it was with COVID. We saw an enormous shift to the at-home bartender, which was exciting. We saw an enormous shift to some level of wellness orientation. You were at least waking up every day going like, am I sick? Am I not sick? Like, how do I feel? Was that because I'm hungover or is that because I'm sick? Like, you were doing that inventory. And people had time, so they were making drinks, which is great. All right. And then now we're moving out of COVID and, certainly, the world has been back, but in an aggressive manner, and convenience is really important. And, for us, one of our really target consumers is the millennial parent. That is who we're finding is, one has a disposable income to be both purchasing an alcoholic product and a non-alcoholic product in the same setting. They're looking for a tool for their weeknight. And, bluntly speaking, being hungover with small children is pretty much the worst. I can speak from experience on that.
I could attest to that as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, for all of those reasons, the RTD space opened itself up to us and made a whole lot of sense. And, the cans continue to take our breath away. People are really looking for an adult non-alcoholic beverage that feels convenient and feels accessible, that doesn't feel like fruit juice, right? And we've been really fortunate to continue to ride that wave. When we look down the road a bit, we just recently launched a non-alcoholic espresso martini, which is phenomenal. I don't know if you've had it yet, but you definitely need to. I think at this point, I mean, I don't want to say this out loud because we might actually be in stock. But we had some stock issues, but definitely on Amazon, we're good for the moment. So check the website, but also check Amazon for that. And, that's right now out of some glass in a pour over status, but it is being moved to cans also as we speak. So but yeah, we're just, we're looking for these trends. We're looking for also flavors that give us a disproportionate advantage because of our distillation process. So if we make a liquid, we want it to be the best liquid that we've had. And, we know where we can kind of move our weight around and, where we've got some advantageous opportunities because of our distillation process, et cetera, that allows us to just make great liquids. So that's sort of how we think about innovation. Like, what does the world need? What does it want? And can we do it well?
Right. Well, you talked about millennials there, which we hear from a lot of brands that we talk to is they're a huge segment, a huge category that's really driving the NA movement, even though in the media side, you hear more about Gen Z. And, there's a lot of hypotheses around that. Like they're just not, they don't have maybe the disposable income, at least not in the numbers that millennials might. Most of them may not be parents yet. They're maybe a little early, below that or before that life stage for them. I'm curious too, another thing that's really evolved since when you guys first started the company is just the people who are drinking alcohol during other occasions. So it feels like a lot of the messaging, a lot of the aim in the early days of the NA space was more about people who were going sober. And certainly that's an important part of the industry as well. But, all the numbers are that the majority of people who are in this category are also drinking, alcoholic beverages at other times. So I'm just curious, I know you out of the gates, I've read where you guys have talked about the product was meant to be however people want to drink it or consume it, whether that be, maybe having half of actual bourbon or having it be all NA. I'm just curious if you've seen any changes in that, or if you have good data on, how people are consuming the product right now.
That was our instinct from the start. When we looked around and, bluntly speaking, just accommodating ourselves, right? We wanted to be able to go to a business dinner, have one, switch to something non-alc, and, not have that awkward moment where you're done, so the conversation's done, et cetera, right? But we still needed to get home and do life the next day. So our instinct was that that was going to be the largest proportion of consumers, and we're still seeing that. The data points move by a point or two, but it is upwards of 85% of consumers who go into Total Wine or your local liquor store. They are buying both alcoholic and non-alcoholic products in the same setting. Now, when they get home, the nuance continues to grow. Are they going halvesies, and just lowering the ABV of a cocktail? Are they, going non-alc because it's Tuesday and they drink on the weekends? There's a litany of use cases there. But the reality is that most people are toggling, and it's really about a moment in time that they're choosing to make that change. And I'm really proud that we had that vision and kind of trusted our instincts, really. I mean, it was more of an instinctual decision from the start, and that continues to still be really proven out.
So you've been in the industry since 2019, which for the NA space feels like an eternity, right? I mean, it seems like there's two groups of brands in this category. It was pre-COVID and post-COVID. So you guys were in that smaller group, I think, that was pre-COVID. So, very different times back then. How have you seen the category evolve overall, and how do you view the potential for the spirits portion of the category in particular?
So that's such a complicated question, because I think the future of the category is going to be largely dictated by additives or not additives, right? I think that we're quickly approaching a fork in a road, and bluntly speaking, THC is the biggest seller right now at Total Wine, of everything, which is sort of it's crazy to think about that. And so, or it's not crazy, but we got there fast, I guess is what I'm alluding to. And so, when I think about, and to be honest, I still don't have my answer fully formulated. So this is in no way a product announcement or, a regulation change or anything, but are you going to play in THC or are you not? I think is going to be the big decision to make for most brands. And or additives in general, right? Whether that's L-theanine or CBD or whatever it is. Spiritless from the start has had the opinion that one of the beautiful things about this business, it's an incredibly challenging business, to be clear, but one of the things that was on our side is that we didn't have to manage around regulatory nuance broadly. And it's been a strategic decision to say we're going to avoid that and we're just going to be purely NA. But I think that the consumer is more and more looking for, levels of optimization. And I think that, that will be a tough decision and a decision that most brands are going to make sooner rather than later, which is, how are we going to play with additives? Yeah, that's something you can tell we're still wrestling with it as we speak. But
Yeah, no, I can imagine that's a bit tricky. And it does feel like the whole THC thing is really the last 6 months to a year, even in particular, is really just jumped up, and how significant that is. So I imagine that's a big decision, because that's a whole different marketing strategy, messaging strategy, and how you do kind of build your approach or focus around that.
I mean, sales channels, et cetera. So it's absolutely an opportunity, but we'll see. We'll see. But I think that's probably weighing the most on the spirits category. And then I think, the other thing that's worth noting is, liquids are only going to continue to improve. Technology is continuing to improve. Just even from a stabilization perspective, we are now able to use truly natural ingredients to stabilize that don't have, the stigma and the complexity of potassium sorbate, et cetera. So, we're going to continue to just go, oh my God, that feels like a drink and that's so cool, which is awesome. I'm super optimistic about opportunities for the palate in the future.
So as we were talking about earlier, so Spiritless is all female founded. You mentioned we were joking about grumpy old men in the kind of alcohol category overall, and obviously, that space has traditionally been more male dominated. I think positively the NA space is a bit different than that. It's I think by nature just a much more inclusive category since you're talking about an inclusive type product. But you've been in this space now for 6 years. What does that look like for you, or what has your experience been with it being a more male dominated industry, at least on the alcohol side?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I see and know what you see. But with all that being said, whenever somebody's says, "Oh gosh, you're just a great female entrepreneur," I'm like, I just kind of like want to be just a great entrepreneur, and that's like sort of been my position from the start. Like I'm happy to take my wins and my losses, pretty fairly on both sides. And I think that there are there are wonderful opportunities and wonderful mentorship opportunities, across the board in the spirits business. And we've been so fortunate to have people that are, and even in the grumpy old man segment, that are, willing and excited to help us and support us. And, I think that the less that it's a thing, honestly, the easier it is. That's my honest opinion on it. I mean, but with that being said, do I love being on an end cap for Women's History Month? And like, will I totally take that? Absolutely, I will. So, it kind of goes both ways. So I can see your point.
That's a great answer. It totally makes sense. Last question I have for you. So you guys have been in business now for, I guess, close to 6 years or so. As you see this movement growing even bigger, I mean, what's your hope for Spiritless, you and your co-founders, for the company, say in the next 5 or 6 years?
When you say 6 years, I'm like, oh, my eyes get sort of big. Because some days it feels like it's been 20 years and some days it feels like it's been 6 months. So, as is life. But, when I look forward in the future, I mean, I think that for us, really continuing to grow meaningfully in the US is still a focus. There's lots of shiny objects outside of our borders right now that I think, for us largely are distractions. Like we're really just focused on winning here and telling our story here. We have a story that I think resonates, and we're also proudly American for that we want to do a good job here. So that is still in the focus, especially in the next probably 24 months. I think that's a reasonable window. We're still thinking about product development. Again, with that criteria, what can we bring to market that we can do better than anybody else? Is there new technology or some interesting things, whether that's like really aging something or, what's on the table for us? So we certainly think about that. And, the world is absolutely shifting under our feet. When you look at beverage alcohol, it's barely keeping up with GDP. When you look at those consumption trends, when you look at where wine is, right? Like it is such a crazy world right now. So, we're just really focused on doing the best we can to see how the winds are shifting, and to try to understand the consumer and what they need, and bringing some products to market. I mean, I would imagine that over the next 5 to 6 years, we're certainly going to be excited to have some transitions, whether that's an acquisition or a roll up of some sort. And that's awesome. There's a life cycle to all this. So I think we're excited to be continuing to build to be in that position.
Well, it's very exciting. And Lauren, I really appreciate you taking the time to share the Spiritless story and where you guys are going. And obviously you've learned along the way. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, hey, John, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for being a fan of the brand.
All right. Awesome. All right. I want to again thank Lauren for joining us. Spiritless has a great story, and we look forward to seeing what new product innovations they continue to come up with. As we move towards spring, we're working on planning out a few road trips for later this year. So if you have an idea for us on where we should go, reach out to us at nationbeer.com. But stay tuned for more of that, as well as some upcoming episodes from across the beverage spectrum. Until then, cheers.